God created man. He is our God, the great I am. There is a God. He is alive. Yes, in him we live and we survive. And from the created man, he is a God, and the great I am. Yes, there is a God. Yes, he is. Yes, and he is alive. Yes, he is alive. In him we live. We live and survive. From the God, hey, yes, he created you and you and you. And he is our God, the great I
Certainly we are thankful to the great God of heaven for the matchless way in which he has blessed us. Somewhere in our world, last night was someone's last night. But God has saw fit that you and I might still be above ground rather than the ground being above us. And for that, we all ought to be eternally grateful. I want to take time, first off, to pray for our minister. Brother Houston and Sister Houston are both outside the city. They are in a great state. I said they're in a great state. They're in the great state of Florida. Yeah, and I know y'all all about Texas and all, but they're in the great state of Florida, and I know they're having a good time. And we just pray for their safe passage, their safe travel. And we just pray that the words that they share there will be a blessing for all those who are in attendance. And we pray that at the appointed time, God will grant them safe passage that they might return to fellowship here with us. Also want to welcome our visitors. I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules and worshiping with us as we seek to worship God in spirit and in truth. And we just pray that something will be said here this morning that will be a blessing in your respective lives. As Brother Houston says, there are no strangers in the house. Only friends we have not met. And so if we haven't had the opportunity to shake your hand or to hug your neck, like they said down south, please give us the opportunity to do that, because we certainly want to make you feel welcome on this morning. I want to just kind of highlight Brother Mario Williams, man. He lifted us up in song this morning. Lord have mercy. Yeah, I almost could just do the invitation right now. Mario sung us in. Yeah, 2 or 3 of y'all all ready to come forward and do what you got to do. And so we just want to thank him for using the gift that God has blessed him with, not for his own glory, but for the glory of Almighty God. And so we just want to commend him and all the brothers who led us in our worship thus far. This morning, I want to begin at least a 2-part series speaking from the theme, Trust and Suffering in the Life of Job. The Bible is such a powerful book, and depending on your season of life, biblical accounts that you have read countless times in the past will take on new meaning for you depending on where you are in life. Every 10-year period of your life is a different season. Your 20s are different from your 30s. Some of y'all haven't gotten there yet, so you don't know this, but your 30s are different from your 40s. And there's a saying now that 50 is the new 40 and 40 is the new 30. And in my mind, that's a bold-faced lie because since I've been 40, I can tell you that 40 ain't been like 30. But every 10-year period of life is a different season. And in my current season, I have taken a profound interest in Job's life. In Job's character, in the kind of man that Job was. And his life has touched me and impressed me in a mighty special way. And if you will indulge me for just a short time, I want to call attention to Job chapter 1. As was read in your hearing, we're going to launch in verse number 6. And then land in verse number 12. We'll take off in verse number 6, and then we'll touch down in verse number 12. Job chapter 1, beginning in verse 6. And I'm going to, for clarity and for clearness of meaning, I'm going to read from the New International Version of the Bible. Job chapter 1, beginning in verse 6 and concluding in verse number 12. The Bible says, one day the angels came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came with them. The Lord said to Satan, where have you come from? Satan answered the Lord, from roaming through the earth and going back and forth in it. Then the Lord said to Satan, have you considered my servant Job? There is no one on earth like him. He is blameless and upright, a man who fears God and shuns evil. Does Job fear God for nothing? Satan replied. Have you not put a hedge around him and his household and everything he has? You have blessed the work of his hands so that his flocks and herds are spread throughout the land. But stretch out your hand and strike everything he has, and he will surely curse you to your face. The Lord said to Satan, yes. Very well then. Y'all will get this pretty soon. Listen, it's powerful just by itself now. I don't even have to do anything with this. But the Lord just looked over at Satan and he said, well, very well then. Very well then. Everything he has is in your hands. But on the man himself, do not lay a finger. Then Satan went out from the presence of the Lord. This morning I want to use for a subject, I can trust God, but can God trust me? Yeah, y'all not. Now what I need y'all to do, I see, I've already owned this, so I need y'all to own it. So I need you to look over at your neighbor. Look over at your neighbor and say, I can trust God, but can God trust me? Lord have mercy. I don't know if we want to answer to that one. I don't know if we want to answer to that one. Suffering is one of the most common and most persistent of all human problems. Suffering is no respecter of persons. Yeah, see, suffering doesn't discriminate based on nationality, creed, or skin color. And different people tend to deal with suffering differently. You know, some people can suffer a great deal and still carry on, while other people will suffer just a little, and instead of carrying on, they have to be carried. See, suffering may be defined as any pain or distress. Some of y'all suffering right now because the Spurs about to get swept. Listen, yeah, y'all know I was going to go there. Yeah, some of y'all going to ask for prayer at the end for Kawhi and his ankle. Hey, truth be told, I don't know if they had a chance anyway. But they sure enough don't have a chance if Kawhi ain't playing. It just is what it is, y'all. And so suffering may be defined as any pain or distress. And someone has rightfully said that nothing begins and nothing ends that is not paid with a moan. For we are born in mama's pain, but we perish in our own. And so, if anybody knows anything about emotional and physical suffering, I believe Job knows. And in Job's life, we see a faithful and trusting God who had a faithful and trusting servant. And the faithful and trusting God who had the faithful and trusting servant, he allowed that faithful and trusting servant to suffer at the hands of an evil and wicked devil. But it was based on the fact that the faithful God trusted his faithful servant. And when you've gone through hardships in life, when you've gone to the doctor and you've received some bad news, when you've had to deal with some difficulties in your life, think about it for a minute, because you can't help but to wonder, once you look at Job's life, you can't help but to wonder whether or not all the pains and all the difficulties that you have faced in life is because God trusted you enough to be faithful. I need y'all to go with me now, because God trusted Job enough that he said, have you considered my servant Job? Oh, and from the text, I see three things. I see three things that I want to deal with this morning, if we got time now, if y'all got time. If y'all don't got time, Mario already sang, and I can do a quick invitation and we can let you go now. But if you got time for it, we're going to try to bring you a blessing. But I see three things as it pertains to trust. From the text. Number one, I see in Job, I see a man God could trust. Number two, I see a God that he could trust. And then number three, I think the question then becomes, can I be trusted? Y'all go with me now. Can I be trusted? Number one, a man God could trust. Number two, a God he could trust. And number three, we have to ask ourselves the question, can I be trusted? Y'all got time for this? Yeah, in Job chapter 1, I've recruited a reader. Y'all know I got a different reader for Bible study. I can't have the same reader for Bible study. And some of y'all know what I'm talking about. And so, yeah, I've recruited a different reader. And so we're going to be in Job chapter 1. Let's begin in verse number 6, because I think what we see first is we see a man that God could trust. Job chapter 1, beginning in verse number 6. What does the Bible say?
And there was a day
And there was a day
when the sons of God
came
to present themselves
before
the Lord.
Before the Lord. And so as we read it in the New International Version, what I want you to understand is that the angels had come before God. And Satan, as the fallen angel, well, guess what? He came too. Okay? Keep reading it.
And the Lord said unto Satan.
And the Lord said, well, Satan, since you here, what you here for? See, some folk, you got to ask them why they here, because see, everybody don't show up to the throne of God for the same reason. And so some folk, you got to ask them based on their lifestyle, what you here for? God looked at somebody out of place. Keep reading it.
Then Satan answered the Lord.
And said,
from going to and fro in the earth.
I've been just going to and fro down on the earth. And see, what we got to understand about that, because see, sometimes I think what happens is we read that text too quickly. And we miss what Satan is implying, and because we miss what Satan is implying, then we don't understand the significance and the impact of what happens next. And so Satan says, I've been going to and fro in the earth. See, Satan has always been active in the world. Satan says, listen, I've been active in the world. And so Peter said it like this in 1 Peter 5 and verse number 8. Y'all know it. He said that they ought to be vigilant, that they ought to be sober, because your adversary, the devil, that he walks about as a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. And so Satan says, listen, God, I've been down on the earth. I'm looking for some folk. I'm looking for some people that I can tempt into sin. I'm looking for some people that I can cause to stumble, that I can cause to fall. I'm looking for those people who are weak, that will fall victim to my devices. And then God said,
and from walking up and down in it.
And
the Lord said unto Satan. Hast thou considered my
Have you
Job?
Considered my servant Job? I need y'all to piece that together, because see when Satan then attacks Job, and Job begins to suffer, what we have to understand is the purpose of it, the thing that Satan was trying to do is he was trying to weaken Job's faith, so that Job would sin by doing what? By cursing God to his face. And so sometimes I don't know that we think that the suffering that we experience, we may not see the suffering that we experience as an attack by Satan on our lives to see if he can weaken our faith enough that we will fall victim to sin, that we might give up on God, and we might turn back, and we might, I need y'all to go with me now. And so he says, so then God says, have you considered my servant Job? Keep reading it.
That there is none like him in the earth.
There is no one like him in all the earth. Read.
A perfect and upright
Perfect
man.
and upright.
One that feareth God.
One that fears God.
And one that escheweth evil.
Now watch this now. God says, since you down there looking for folk, come on now. I got a man that I trust. Yeah. Since you're looking for somebody to try to tempt, I got a man that I got confidence in, that I trust, that if you were to touch his life, that he won't give in. God knew Job so intimately. God had watched Job's life. He knew Job's walk. He knew what kind of man Job was, so much so that God was willing to go to war with Job against Satan. That's all right. I guess you got to be in the military to really understand that. See, so in the military, one of the greatest compliments that you can give another soldier is to tell him that I'd go to war with you. I'd be willing to go to battle with you. And so God says, listen, Job, I have so much faith in you, so much trust and confidence in you that I'm willing to go to war with you against Satan. Yes, Lord. Yes, Lord. Think about this for a minute. Of all the people that might have considered themselves to be God's people at that particular time. Yes, now, the Bible doesn't tell us how many people God had at that time, but of all the people that might have considered themselves faithful to God, God says, I have seen Job. And you know what? There's nobody like him in all the earth. Hallelujah. Lord have mercy. I am so impressed. I'm awestruck about just the kind of man that Job had to be. Come on now. For God to have that much confidence in him. And you know what? Look, listen, can I be honest with you for a minute? If I were to be honest with you for a minute, I'd tell you that, you know what? I'm also probably a little envious of Job. Yeah, just a little bit. It's like when you were growing up. If your mama, if mama asked you to do something based on your competency, based on your capability, you good at it, and they asked you to do it instead of asking one of your siblings to do it, man, you were just as proud as you wanted to be. You ain't no... and it was interesting because she was asking you to go do some work, but you didn't mind doing the work because it signified that she had confidence in you. You were happy she selected you over your sister. God said, have you considered my servant Job? And I'm just a little bit envious because you know what? I'm just crazy enough to wish God would have said, have you considered my servant, Donald Bentley? Lord have mercy. I tell y'all what, if God had called my name, oh, y'all couldn't tell me a thing. Y'all couldn't tell me a thing. My chest would be stuck so far out or whatever, it'd be bumping into you before it even get to you. I mean, you couldn't tell me a thing. But see, here's what happens. See, we don't want the suffering of Job, but we wouldn't mind the honor that God gave him when he said, you know what, I'm willing to go to war with him because of the trust and the confidence that I have in him. And it's powerful to me. It's powerful to me to even think that, see, we know that we can trust and have confidence in God. He's God. But to even think that the great God of heaven, that the God who rules over everything, that he's mindful enough that he can look down and God says, you know what, I can have confidence and trust in a man. Lord have mercy. There's something inside of us that should just make us want to be that person. Hallelujah. Young people, listen to the preacher. Live your life in such a way that God and your parents can trust you. I think I said something. I think I said something now. Live your life in such a way that God first and your parents can trust you. And you know what, young people, it starts with small things. You know, say for instance, you know, you ask your parents, can I go to the movie theater? And parents, you know, hesitantly, they might say yes, and they say, okay, well, you need to be back at a certain time. Yeah, and instead of coming back at that certain time, you might come back 30 minutes past the time that you said. And you might think, well, you know, no big deal. You know, we were in traffic, you know how it is around here, and so we got slowed down, and I'm just 30 minutes late. It doesn't mean much. It's not a big deal. It was just 30 minutes, but really what you've done is you've demonstrated to your parents that they can't trust you. Y'all, I need y'all. You've demonstrated to your parents that they can't trust you, and so the next time you ask to go to the movies now, you think they were hesitant the first time. Now they're getting ready to really be hesitant. Why? Because you didn't keep your word. And so we gotta get back to a time when our word meant something. Yeah. When you say what you mean and mean what you say. I need y'all to go with me. And so my son, I like to use my kids as examples, and it just make them embarrassed and what have you, but we do it. And so my son, you know, he can't date. He's too young. And so he can't date. But I said, listen, son, when you're able to date, and when you call yourself having a little girlfriend, I'm not looking at him. I'm just looking on over here. And when you call yourself having a little girlfriend, listen, son, once you say that you're with her, then you honor that commitment that you made. Yeah, and so around my house, you're not going to say you're with one girl and have another girl call in the house. It's not, we don't play that. Y'all see what I'm saying? I got to teach him what? I got to teach him to honor his word. Because one day he's going to get married. Lord have mercy. And then he's already going to be trained to what? To to honor the commitment that he made. Yeah, and so you can't have anybody else call in the house now because we don't play that. And it's interesting because see, a lot of times as parents, see, we don't mind if our sons are players. My son is, he's impressionable, so he look at Sonny, he see how sharp Sonny is and whatnot. Sonny got on them colorful suits and whatnot and gaiters and what have you. And he like, you know what? I wanna look like Brother Sonny. It's all right. It's all right. Hey, Sonny say, I just look like a player now. I'm not a player. I just look like one. Yeah, I just look like one. Yeah, but see, we don't have a problem with our sons being players. But then we want our daughters to find a good man. You let your son be a player, but you want your daughter to have a good man. Well, raise your son to be the good man that you want for your daughter. So at least he can bless somebody else's daughter. Help me, somebody. Lord have mercy. Young people, live your life in such a way that God and your parents can trust you. Job was a man that God could trust. I'm awed by the kind of man that Job had to be in order for God to have so much confidence in him. And I just wish, listen, I'm not telling y'all I want to go through a whole lot now. I'm not saying that. But I tell you what, I wouldn't be upset. I'd stick my chest out something fierce if God were to say, have you considered? And then I believe the next piece is this. See, Job was a man that God could trust. And then Job knew that God could be trusted. Keep reading in Job chapter 1. Drop down to verse number 9. After verse number 8, get verse number 9.
Then Satan answered the Lord.
Satan answered the Lord.
It said, does Job fear God for naught? Listen now.
Satan said, listen, well, does Job trust you for nothing? Satan says, you know what, there's a reason why Job trusts you. And it's interesting because Satan is almost implying that he knows that God can be trusted. Satan like, listen, I know why he trusts you. It's evident, you're God. Satan, I love it. Does he trust you? Does he fear you for nothing? And so get for me Numbers chapter 23, I believe. Numbers chapter 23. So Satan recognizes that God has all power. And that God can bless a man, that God can do things for a man that would cause that man or give that man reason to trust him. Hallelujah. And so Satan says, well, listen, does he trust you for nothing? Numbers chapter 23, if you have it, drop down to about verse number 19. Let's get something on record rather about God and who God is. Numbers chapter 23, drop down to verse number 19. What does the Bible say there?
God is not a man.
God is not like man. Lord have mercy. Somebody ought to say amen right there. Hallelujah. Because if God were like man, some of us would be in trouble. Oh man. God is not like man.
That he should lie.
And God don't lie like your uncle now. Somebody, anybody had that drunk uncle that he come around and you know what, all he want to do is tell you about something. You can't believe anything that he say. Can't believe anything that brother telling you. You're like, what is he talking about? I don't believe any of that. God is not a man that he should lie. God don't lie like your uncle and them lie. God can be trusted. Keep reading it.
Neither the Son of Man
that
he should repent.
Keep reading.
Hath he said,
yeah, what he says,
that he shall not do.
Yeah, he gonna do it. Read.
Or hath he spoken,
and
shall he not make it good?
Shall he not make it come to pass? And so God has the power that he can do what he says, and he has the character that he does what he says. And so God can be trusted. And then, so Job understood that he could trust God. And even as I look over my own life, because Satan then says that, well, does he trust you for nothing? Have you not put a hedge around him? Put a hedge around his family. Bless all the works of his hand so that he prospers. And so he's saying that Job has valid reason to trust God. And even as I look over my own life, I realize that God has placed a hedge around me. You know, I did a 12-month tour in Iraq. Then I did a 12-month tour in Afghanistan. And I came back with all my faculties and all my body parts in order and in place. And I realized that it was only because God had put a hedge around me. Yeah. And even right now, anytime I get on an airplane, because for me, a man wasn't meant to fly. Listen, if he was, God would have given us wings if we were meant to fly. And so y'all know I don't like to fly, but every time I get on an airplane, and the landing gear works on the way up, and it works on the way down. And Mustafa didn't try to hijack the plane and light his shoes on fire, and that plane lands safely. I realized that it was only because God had placed a hedge around me. Yeah. And even in San Antonio, we're riding around and folk around here don't know how to drive and what have you. And y'all cousin them, you know, Tweety Bird and Stanking them. And so she driving and she texting and driving. She eating a 3-piece chicken dinner. Now listen, if you're driving, right? Let me just help you. If you're driving and you gotta order fast food, get chicken tenders. Get you something that you can handle with just one hand now. I mean, don't get the chicken with the bone that you got to. They driving. She got a whole Sunday dinner that she working on while she driving, and she putting on makeup and eyelashes and painting her nails on the steering wheel and what have you. And But somehow, some way that her car stays in her lane. And your car stays in your lane. And it's not because of her. It's only because God had a hedge around you. Listen, all I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get you to appreciate some of God's blessings that we have that we don't readily recognize. Every day that you're on the road and you make it from point A to point B, God had placed a hedge around you. And if you don't believe that, just go on the other side of town, and I guarantee you there was 2 or 3 accidents. And that could have been you. Had it not been for the fact that God had a hedge around me. And so I see that God he's protected my life. Not only that, but he's protected my family. Yeah, he's blessed me to have this little piece of job that I have. And so it's not because of me, y'all. It's because he has placed a hedge around me. And he has demonstrated to me that he can be trusted. And then watch this. Because have you ever known somebody that had so much confidence in you and trusted you so much that no matter what, you didn't want to let that person down? Amen. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Yes, sir. So for some people, that's how you feel about your parents. And when you really have a good relationship with your children, that's how children ought to respond to parents, because parents ought to have confidence in their children. They ought to build them up. They ought to give them responsibility. And kids ought to feel like, you know what? I don't want to let my parents down. And sometimes when they're small children or whatever, you have small children, they'll do something and they'll make you upset. And you might snap at them and they'll immediately start crying because they know they've let you down. When I had just joined the military, I grew up and daddy wasn't around, and so I didn't have many positive male role models. I had some uncles now. I had some drunk uncles, but not positive role models now. Mess around with them. But I didn't have many positive male role models. And it wasn't until after I joined the military, I was stationed out in Fort Ord, California before it closed down. And I was a medical specialist, and so my supervisor was a physician assistant, a guy by the name of Cameron O'Connor. Just by the name, y'all know we probably wasn't supposed to, but you don't expect Cameron O'Connor to.
Come on now, take the picture.
I'm just trying to show you that it wasn't expected though. And so even when I got there, I was still a little hard-headed. And then I got to a point where I said, you know what, I'm gonna try to be a good soldier, because what had happened is I was supposed to get promoted before this other guy, because I had been there before him. I had more time in service. I had been there longer. But he was another guy that looked like Cameron O'Connor. And so initially, y'all know what I'm thinking now. We jump to conclusions a lot of times that, it's because, it ain't always about that now. Can I drop that off? It ain't always about that. And so what happened is I looked at myself and all the boys in the barracks, all the barracks lawyers, what we call them out, they were saying, man, they doing you wrong, man, they doing you wrong. You know you were supposed to get that promotion over him. It's racism. But, I thought about it to myself. I said, well, you know what? I haven't been doing my part. Yeah, I haven't been doing what I'm supposed to do. I show up late, like... Listen, I wasn't a good soldier back then. Look, it took me a while. And so I show up late. Back then we had black boots. My boots wasn't shine. Uniform was looking raggedy and what have you. I wouldn't. And you know what I said to myself? I said, you know what? I'm going to just be a good soldier.
That's all right.
When they tell me to do something, I say, yes, Sergeant. Right away, Sergeant. On the way, Sergeant. I'm already moving, Sergeant. I said, you know what? I'm going to shine my boots.
That's all right.
Press my uniform.
Yeah.
And show up on time. Who'd have thought? Who'd have thought? People really care about you showing up on time. Who would have thought that? And so I tell you what, just by doing those things,
Yes.
showing up on time, in the right uniform, doing what you're told to do,
Say that.
man, they started looking at me differently. They said, man, that got squared away. That's a good soldier. And so, we continued on a little bit or whatever, and so I was slowly coming around. And then it came to a time where my sergeant was getting ready to get out on a hardship discharge. And they needed to put somebody in charge
Come on now.
of the section, of the aid station. And lo and behold, Cameron O'Connor, he came to me.
Yes. That's all right.
Y'all know how y'all do sometimes. You look around like, hold on a minute. Is he talking? He's not talking to me. I know he's not talking to me. And so they elevated me over other individuals who were more experienced,
Mercy.
had more time in service, and who I thought would have definitely gotten the nod. But he said, you know what? I trust you.
Yes.
I have confidence in you. And I tell you what, that meant a lot to me. It meant a lot to me. And so even to this day, I elevate that man. Y'all talk about that man, we come to blows, and I don't talk about him. Even to this day, I elevate him because I say that I probably wouldn't be where I am had it not been for the confidence that this man had in me. And so he gave me that responsibility, and now these guys that used to be higher ranked than me, now I'm higher ranked than them. Lord have mercy. Woo! See, when God get the work on. So now I'm above them and I'm running things. And so I tell you what, I worked real hard. I worked real hard. Why did I work so hard? Because I didn't want to let him down.
Hallelujah.
I didn't want to let him down. It's God. He's a God that we can trust. He's placed a hedge around us. We ought to love him enough that when we're tempted with sin, even when that sin, and watch you see what happened in Job's life is that sin or that temptation didn't come in the form of alcohol. See, a lot of times when we think about temptation, we think about stuff like fornication, we think about alcohol, we think about drugs, we think about somebody getting on your last nerve, you cursing them out. No. It's not always that. Sometimes, like you see what Satan did to Job, he just touched your finances. And then when he touched some of y'all finances, some of y'all get the play lottery tickets, y'all get to thinking about illegal things. Y'all will do some. Y'all claiming some kids y'all don't have. Y'all start doing some things. I'm just trying to modernize it for you because I want y'all to get this now. I want y'all to get it. He touched his finances. Then he touched his family. And sometimes when we lose people that are close to us, it'll weaken our faith because we start doubting God. Well, if grandma was as faithful as she was, why would God take her? And that shakes your faith. It's temptation. And then he touched Job's health. Yeah, when you go to the doctor, you get bad news. We don't really think immediately that's Satan just, he's tempting us, that our faith will be weakened and we'll give up on God. But God can be trusted. And then the final piece is this. Can I be trusted?
Mercy.
When faced with temptation, can he trust me? We don't want to let him down. Can he trust me? When that temptation manifests itself as your finances, can he trust me? When it's your own health, can he trust you? And I will submit to you this. Can we just come close? Come close. It's easy to say what you will do before something happens.
Hallelujah. Say that.
Than what you will do once that thing happens. See, they tell us that you don't know how you'll respond in a firefight until the first round goes down range. Yeah, well, let me bring that back because everybody ain't military. Let me say this now. So you don't know how you're going to respond when you go in the doctor's office and they tell you got something until it happens. Yeah, and you can say one thing about what I know I won't do and I won't do and I won't do. Yeah, wait till you get in there. Go back to Job chapter 6. Let's get verse 11. Verse 11 and verse number 12. What does the book say?
But put forth thine hand now.
So then Satan says to God, he says, listen, you've given Job reason to trust you. But if you put forth your hand right now, keep reading it.
And touch all that he has.
And touch all that he has.
And he will curse thee to thy face.
Then I guarantee you he will sin by cursing you to your face. Now watch this.
And the Lord said to Satan.
And the Lord said to Satan.
Behold.
All
that he hath is in thy power.
Listen. God said, you know what? I'll take that bet. Lord, have mercy. Man, does God have enough confidence in me that if he's approached by Satan and Satan says, you know what, I want to do this or whatever, and God says, you know what, I'll take that bet. Lord, have mercy. Is God looking at your life and he knows about your walk and he knows about the level of faith that you have, that if Satan wanted to touch you, that God would say, you know what, I'll take that bet. Keep reading it.
Upon himself. Put not forth thine hand. So Satan went forth from the presence of the Lord.
And went forth from the presence of the Lord. Now watch this. Can I be trusted? We realize, go to Matthew chapter 26. We realize that there was a time when we couldn't be trusted. But we pray we might all grow to a point where now we can be trusted. And I say that because I remember Peter. Y'all remember Peter? Yeah, there was a time when Peter couldn't be trusted. Yeah, there was a time when Peter, he was still a work in progress. Yeah, but then Peter later on would get to a point where God could trust him. Y'all remember in Matthew chapter 26, you remember that Jesus, he was getting ready to die. They were getting ready to betray him. He was getting ready to be illegally tried and convicted in a religious court. And then he's going to be beaten. And so Peter, he's going to be standing by. He's going to witness all of this. Yeah, now before they even got to that point, Matthew chapter 26, drop down to verse number 33. Matthew chapter 26, drop down to verse number 33 and watch what the Bible says.
Peter answered and said unto him.
So Jesus had said to him in the previous verse, he had said, you know what? All his disciples. He said, all of you would be offended of me, would stumble, would fall away over me this night. And then watch Peter in verse number 33. Peter says, listen, all the other folk might fall away, but not me. So Peter says, listen, when the shooting starts, they might get to running, but I'm not running. I'm in there. Y'all. See, we can think that we're prepared for something until it happens. And then it'll shake us to our foundation and we can't handle it. And so that's why in the next piece we're going to look at like what made Job able to deal with all that he dealt with. And you know there's something else because God endorsed Job. He didn't endorse Job's wife. Yeah.
Come on now, hallelujah.
God had confidence in Job. He didn't say, have you considered Job's wife? Because we know what y'all. Different people can handle different things. Job could obviously handle more than his wife could handle. Oh, we'll deal with that. Matthew chapter 26, keep reading in verse number 33. What does it say?
Though all men shall be offended because of thee.
Peter said, though all men shall be offended because of thee.
Yet will I never be offended.
Peter said, listen, yet will I never be offended. I'm not, listen, Lord, you can count on me. See, and I'll tell you, you know what? Don't get mad at Peter. Because Peter didn't want to let God down. And he told himself, that if something happens, listen, Lord, I'm not going to let you down. And I'm not mad at that because we all ought to have that position. We all ought to be saying, Lord, I'm not going to let you down. We ought to be saying to our parents, I'm not going to let you down. Men, we ought to be saying to our families, I'm not going to let you down. Children ought to be saying to the parents, I'm not going to let you down. Keep reading.
Jesus said unto him, Verily I say unto thee,
that
this night, before the cock crows,
before that rooster crows,
thou shalt deny me thrice.
You shall deny me 3 times. God says, you know what, Peter, right now I can't trust you, son. See, yeah, God looked at Job's life and knew he could trust Job.
Yes.
God looked at Peter's life and knew he couldn't trust Peter. Lord have mercy. Drop down to verse number 67. I got to wrap it up. Drop down to verse number 67.
Then did they spit in his face.
Then once they started beating Jesus, they spit in his face.
And buffeted him.
And
others smote him.
Another slapped him, read.
With the palms of their hands. Saying, prophesy unto us.
By
Christ.
Keep reading.
Who is that smote thee?
Who slapped you? Keep reading it.
Now Peter sat within the palace.
So Peter was sitting by now. He's seeing all this.
Yeah,
he's seeing all this now. Yeah, it's like y'all looking funny. It's like when you see the MVP struggle, it throw your whole game off. When you see your best player struggle and they stopping him, it throw y'all. Once the Spurs saw Kawhi go down, do y'all remember what happened after that? Man, they was up almost 75 points in the first half. all up 75. Kawhi went down. It's like the spirit was taken from the rest of the team. They had nothing left. Peter sitting by, he see Kawhi getting beat. He's like, Lord have mercy. He thought that he could handle it. Lord, I'm not going to let you down, Lord. But then them rounds started going off when they started swinging. Keep reading it.
And a damsel came unto him, saying,
Damsel came up to him.
Thou also was with Jesus.
When you with him? Lord have mercy. Y'all, when you with him? You know what they doing to him? When you with him too? No. Keep reading quickly.
But he denied before them all.
Keep reading.
Saying, I know not what thou sayest.
I don't know what you're talking about. Keep reading.
And when he was gone out into the court.
Another
maid saw him. And said unto them.
Yes, sir.
That were there. This fellow was also with
you. Yeah, he was with him. Yeah, he was with him too. Keep reading it.
And again he denied with an oath.
Man, again, Peter said, no, that wasn't me. No, that was somebody that looked like me. God is not a man that he will lie. But a man, when he's tempted, lie in a heartbeat now, when you get the pressing him. Keep reading it.
I do not know the man.
I don't know him. Keep reading it.
And after a while, came unto him they that stood by.
Yeah.
And said to Peter.
They said to Peter,
surely thou also art one of them.
Man, surely you one of them, man. Keep reading.
For thy speech bewrayeth thee.
You talk like them. Yeah, we know you. You talk like them. Yeah, all y'all was together. Y'all running together. Now Peter gonna change his speech. Watch this now. Y'all see it? Peter say, look, I talk like them. No, I don't. Let me show you. Lord have mercy. See, some of y'all on your job. Some of y'all on the job now. You talk a certain kind of way, they say, oh, you talk like the religious folk or whatever. No, I don't. Let me show you. Then you start talking more like they talk. Keep reading it.
Then began he to curse and to swear.
Lord have mercy, Lord have mercy. But Peter said, I'm going to prove to y'all. Keep reading it.
Saying, I know not the man.
I don't know him. Keep reading it.
And immediately the cock crew.
Lord have mercy. And immediately that rooster crowed. Keep reading it.
And Peter remembered the word of Jesus.
And then it dawned on him what Jesus had said. See, when you tell your child, you told them not to do something and they do it, and then you snap at them because they realize they've let you down, and they start crying because they remember what you said. So immediately when Peter remembers what God had said, watch what he does. Keep reading it.
Before the cock crowed, thou shalt deny me thrice.
Deny me 3 times? Keep reading it.
He went out and wept bitterly.
And he went out, and a grown man. I said a grown man. He wept bitterly. Y'all sisters would have been looking at it. Y'all would have called him some names and whatnot. No. But you ought to want to find a man that loves God enough that it hurts him if he lets God down. That's the kind of man you ought to be looking for. Yeah. Because see, if he has that mentality, then he will take care of his family because he knows that if he doesn't, he'll let God down. Yeah, he'll love you the way Christ loved the church. Why? Because he knows that if he doesn't, he'll let God down. And while I'm here, since the Spirit just took me down that road, now listen now. When we get married, don't violate the trust that you have. See, God holds trust in high esteem. I know that's right because the only acceptable reason for divorce and then subsequent remarriage is if somebody in the marriage violates marital trust. I don't want to let my family down. I don't want to let my spouse down. I don't want to let God down. I'm not going to violate the commitment that I made. But sometimes Satan will tempt you. And the question is, can I be Can I be trusted? Can I be trusted? Sometimes Satan tempts us through suffering. And Satan won't give up, but he knows that you might. And so he keeps pushing. And the reality is some people are more resilient than others. And the question is, how do we get to a point where we can deal with some things and not break? And so that's where we're going. I just got to give you a preview of that. That's where we're going. Because there was something about Job. That's why I'm so impressed with Job. Listen, you don't even try to act like you could have handled what Job dealt with. Amen. You know, we start saying, oh, well, you know what? I got enough Jesus, and if this would have, I'd be no. You know, I feel, can I? Come on now. I feel so much empathy for parents that have to bury children.
Mercy, mercy, Lord, mercy.
Listen, just the thought of having to bury one of my children. Lord. Listen, man, listen, I'd be tore up, y'all. This little boy right here, he the last one we got in the house. If something happens to this little boy right here. And you know, my wife and I, we talk about it sometimes because we realize how strongly we feel about him. And we kind of know that if something happens to him while he's in the other person's possession, mercy. Lord have mercy. And I say to her, I say, Lord have mercy. If something happened to him while he was in my possession, I just wouldn't come back home. I keep on going. Because I know what that would be like. And she has to say the same thing, because if something happens to him while he's in her possession, she might as well not come back home. I couldn't handle it. And we'll talk. Job lost all his children. And while I'm here, let me just say that you know, we put the finger on Job's wife. But think about it now. She lost everything Job lost. We don't even talk about her. We talk about long suffering and patience or whatever. We talk about Job. We don't say anything about what his wife suffered. She suffered the same thing that Job suffered. You think she wasn't affected by his health? That affected her. But she couldn't handle as much as Job can handle. And so how do we as God's children become stronger, more resilient, so we can deal with the tribulation that we face in life? As I close, I remember Jesus said in John 16 and verse number 33, he says, in this world, you will have tribulation. Yes. But then he said, be of good cheer. Hallelujah. I have overcome the world. Hallelujah. If we're going to overcome the world, we got to overcome based on our relationship and our faith and our trust in Jesus Christ. And there may be someone here this morning that you haven't placed your trust in the Lord. You haven't given your life to Jesus Christ. If you're here this morning and you're not a child of God, we want you to come. How do you come, preacher? You come by hearing God's word. Romans 10, verse number 17. So then faith cometh by hearing, and hearing by the word of God. You come by believing that Jesus is the Christ. John 20, verse number 31. Hebrews 11 and verse number 6. You come by repenting of all your past sins. Luke 13, 3, verse number 5. Acts 17 and verse number 30. You come by confessing Jesus as the Christ. Romans 10, verse 9 and 10. And then you come by being baptized in water. What's it going to be for? It's going to be for the forgiveness of all your past sins. And then you come into a saving relationship with Jesus Christ. And I'll tell you what, at that particular time, you have somebody that you can trust. Yes. Yeah, without a doubt, you got somebody then that you can trust. And the question is, can he trust you. If you're here this morning and you just need the prayers of the church, we want to pray with you and for you because we want you to be strengthened. And I'll tell you what, before the suffering ever starts, you've got to learn how to depend on God. Yeah, you got to learn how to be dependent on God long before you need to be dependent on God. And so we're going to ask that Mario, if he will, if he'll sing Learning to Lean. Yeah, because if we're going to get to where Job was, and listen, y'all, I want to get to where Job was. Man, I'm impressed by Job. I wish God would look down on me and just look at my life and my walk and be as impressed with my life and have confidence in me the same way he had in Job. Lord, have mercy. But we got to learn to lean on him. If you're here this morning and you have need of prayers or if you have need to give your life to Christ, we want you to come as we all together stand and sing the Savior's invitation. Come right now.
I'm learning to lean. Yes, I'm learning to lean.
Is there one that needs to come this morning?
I am learning.
Is there one that needs to come this morning?
I'm learning to lean on Jesus. Oh,
is there more power that you need to find?
I'm finding more power.
Will you come this morning? Is there one that needs prayer?
Yes, I am learning. I'm learning
before the suffering. Suffering doesn't discriminate. Suffering is no respecter of persons. It will touch all our lives at some point. Sometimes we might think we're prepared for it, but we don't know